what made you fall in love with magic? Sleight of hand, right? We're going to talk shop. I'll tell you exactly the moment I fell in love with sleight of hand is when I learned the ohms count, right? I mean, it seems basic now, right? It seems like it's such a basic move, but I remember back then when I did it, it was so interesting that you can hide a card, right? But it seems simple right now, right? But I think what's interesting is that at that moment, we fell in love with a move for a move, right? And then we started collecting, right? Like, you know, what defines a good magician? You know, like the secrets we know, the people we know, right? And these moves, right? And we become collectors, right? And even though it's all great and good to read books and videos and everything just to build up your knowledge, right? There comes a certain point where it becomes only about that, right? Where what defines me is these moves and categories, right? So, but that's not what sleight of hand is about, right? I mean, I think sleight of hand is more basic and raw, right? And I think we have lost our way in a sense, like myself included, right? I remember watching Roberto Giobbi, right, give this big talk about magic. You know, like, here's the pyramid of the effect, right? And I remember sitting there like years ago in a convention, I'm just like, I get it, this is what magic is about, yeah. And then when you leave, you're like, how do I apply this? And all of a sudden you're like, you have no idea, right? It's just like, it's like a really good motivational speaker, right? His job is in that moment when you go in there, you'll be like, yeah, I get it. And when you leave, you're like, what? Like, you don't get it, right? Like, I love to try to teach people things in magic, and that's a very interesting concern to me, is what's the difference between inspiration and being able to think on your own, right? It's like, if I ever became like a philosophy teacher in high school, right, 101, right? I think the only thing I want people to leave is to ask why, okay? And I think asking why is probably the most, like, is so important in life and everything, especially in magic. Because I think that, like, for example, like a biddle move, right? So if we're just talking shop here, but like, we do these kind of things. Like, for example, if I'm going to take out like a 4 of a kind, so let's say a standard trick that a lot of people know. So, like, you know, like we do this, right? So we say, a lot of times we do this, right? We go, here's 4 aces, right? And let's say I needed to like add a card or whatever, right? And then we do this, right? And we go, look, right? And then it made me think, like, because I remember when I was learning magic, these kind of moves, right? They make sense, right? Because you think, all right, so I have the 4 aces, and then I do the biddle move. Because why? Because it's required of me to switch out X amount of cards for X amount of cards, right? And then we just do it, right? And then we keep going, right? And what's funny is that it becomes that our actions, right, is dictated by our methods, right? If you really think about it, right, I think that, again, asking why. If you really thought about it, the basic question I always say to myself is, how hard is it to do something, right? I think that's kind of a funny question. How hard is it to do something, right? So if I take out 4 aces and put them on the table, that's it, right? That's the extent of it, right? There's no reason for me to put it back on to count, right? And if always ask why on all those little points, and then and I do that. I go, why did I put the aces on, right? If you're true to yourself, most of the time, I myself included, I just say, well, because I need to do the biddle move, right? And then you just go, well, that sucks, right? Because you're doing your external, like your reality, right, is do a move, right? Every motion is dictated by that. And the only reason they can't see it is because we're doing sleight of hand, apparently, right? So that's why they can't see it, right? And it's funny that we become blind to that too, right? We become blind to our actions, Right? So Ascanio, if you don't know who Ascanio is, you should try to find his books. He talks about this concept of the outer reality and the inner reality. Okay, so for example, if I do this, like if I do this, right, and let's say I did something, right? Let's say I did a sleight of hand or something, right? And a magician will tell you, again, we're talking shop talk, right? So like in a convention or just hanging out with their magic friends, right? And they say a line like this, wow, I didn't see anything, right? I used to take that as a compliment, right? And go, yes, that's what sleight of hand's about, right? Yes, I didn't see anything, right? But what are they actually talking about? It's kind of funny. They aren't commenting on what you really did. They're commenting about the inner reality of us as magicians. So when they say, like, if I did this, right, you should be able to say, you did nothing, right? Yeah, because the outer reality is I did nothing, right? Well, actually, I'll take that back. I did something. I put the deck on the table, right? So if they say you did nothing, like if I start quoting like this, that means we're talking about like the method, right? So if I did this and I say, what did I do? There you go. You did nothing. No, that's wrong, right? That's wrong. No, I put the deck on the table, right? Right. So when people go, wow, you did nothing, right? They actually have no idea what our the real world is, right? And I think that sleight of hand, like how would I say it? It's like a artist, like a really well-known artist, like he's like 50 years old or something. He says, I want to draw like a child, right? And the only thing he can do is examine children drawing, right? However creepy that is, you know. But the best he can do is mimic it, right? Right? He can't be a child, right? And just do it, right? And us as magicians, we, in the beginning, like let's not worry about like why we fell in love with magic effects side, right? Because that's just a whole nother thing. But let's talk about sleight of hand, right? Like engineering, right? I fell in love with it because I love doing something so mechanical, right? It's just so, it's like blood and sweat, right? It's like something so mechanical and just down and dirty, but somehow it can create, you know, like this beauty or whatever magic is. I'm a move monkey by heart, right? And I think that we get this stigma, right? It's like either like, oh wow, you do really cool sleight of hand, and then you get some magicians come by like, well, you're just masturbating, you know, you're just doing it for the move, right? And in a sense they're right, and in a sense they're wrong, because they're not understanding what sleight of hand's about, right? You can tinker, right? You can come up with the most crazy method, right? But you need to. But I think, like for example, I think people know me for crazy methods, right? Like I spent 5 years of my life working on one goddamn color change, right? And in that time in my life, I loved it. And when I showed it to magicians and they had no idea what I did, I felt good, right? Yeah, of course, we should, right? But they think, now thinking about it, a lot of people think that when they see something like that, they think that's magic, right? It isn't. It isn't magic. It's the craft of magic, right? But it's not degrading, right? People think that like it's on the same ladder between the effect and craft, which is, you know, the craft is on the bottom and then the effect's on top, right? No, it's two ladders, right? That shouldn't be a negative thing,
Sure.
right? We should love the method, right? We should love our craft, right? But I think loving our craft is good, but magic shouldn't be a byproduct of our love, right? It shouldn't just somehow ooze out magic and be like, oh, and that's what magic is, right? It should require you to love your craft and also study the effect, right? Everything you're doing really has no outworld context except for you're going from move to move to move, right? And the only reason that laymen don't feel it, or at least they do feel it, is because we're doing sleight of hand, so like it's hidden by my hands. So I think it goes back to what we were talking about method, about so I spent 10 years of my life on the cover pass, right? And I've never shown a layman.
Wow.
And it's interesting. Like I always think that, why haven't I shown it to a layman? You know, because I remember the first time I did a diagonal palm shift for a layman, and they didn't look at it, right? I'm just like this, and I'm like, fuck, they didn't even stare at my hands. You know, like I practiced so goddamn long. It's like, it makes you sad, right? You know that Larry Jennings story where he did a pass to a layman and nobody saw it, so he passed it again just so make sure, like, look down his hands so he can do it. Like, what? Like, we're like egotistical assholes, right? But I think that, and it's an interesting thing because I see a lot of kids trying to do hard moves like, you know, like cover pass or like down palm shifts and all this stuff, right? And I say, ultimately, in the end, it is very inefficient, right? Because of the context, right? Because a lot of times when we do a cover pass, and you know, I can't do it on the table here, but it's most of the time we do these hard moves for the most banal ways, right? Just to cover, like control card second to the top. Right? But what I love about that, I didn't think I wasted 10 years of my life on that, because I think the lessons you learning that is the journey is more important than the actual move itself, right? It's like if I'm like a beginner magician, I'm like, oh, I wonder what the second deal thing is. I want to learn that, and Steve Forty's sitting next to you, and he'd be like, I'll just teach you, right? And he shows you like literally the real work, right, on the second deal, right? And then, do you think this kid would understand that it's the best second deal in the world?
Yeah,
No, right? Because I think that you have to go through a journey of all the shitty moves, the shitty methods, or even you coming up with moves, right? And it has, you know, like, and ultimately it doesn't even have to come down to what he's doing, right? The journey is very important. But like, for example, like if you're doing like I think context is probably one of the most important things. So
probably
for example,
one of the most difficult things.
True.
Like
but
in terms of that's part of what makes it an art, is the context of it.
Yeah, but I think if we try to be more minimal and just talk about methods, right? Because we can talk about context in, you know, and it's much bigger. But for example, I'll try to show you this. So the reason the cover pass doesn't work isn't the mechanics. The mechanics are valiant, right? Try and not make your hands move, and we can talk about that too. But it's the context we create, right? Because we're doing nothing, right? Is like, for example, I mean, this is just off the cuff, but I separated the reds and blacks, right? And these are just ideas. But if you had it, you got a choice. Which ones do you want to use, the blacks or the reds? It's up to you. The blacks? Okay. So leave the black cards there. And what I'm going to try to do is, let's try this. Should have worked. You got to use your imagination. Because if you do, it looks like all the black cards are here, right? And obviously, all the red cards are here. But it's just an idea. Hopefully that looks good. It doesn't really matter if it looks good or not, because we're talking shop. But I think the thing about the cover pass is that there is a strength into it, right? And the strength is what it achieves. Okay, so instead of thinking of it as like if you're going to control a card second to the top, right? It'll be something like they put the card back in and you just do this, like, I don't know where the card is, and you just slip it, right? It's the strength is that you're actually transposing two packets, right? So this is very interesting. So if wow, I did that. I thought I should. So, for example, if you had this situation where, let's see, pseudo, like this, right? So it's just black and black, right? Now do this. Separate the reds and the blacks, right? If you had a choice, what would you want, the reds or the blacks? Right? And it's already switched.
Yeah,
right? But it's interesting, right? Because now it's like, it's funny is that if you show that to magicians, they're like, oh, you just flip the card and nobody cares, right? Right? Because the method is not interesting, right? But the lessons of me learning the cover pass, like for 10 years, it's not to say, oh, it's worth this and because it's easier, right? It's not about easy or hard. It's about efficiency, right?
Sure.
And it also, sleight of hand is always the slave to your outer reality. The reason the cover pass doesn't work is there's no outer reality.
Sure.
The outer reality is this,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And what's funny is that when you do a good cover pass, right? Because I remember I was like 10 years ago, like I was learning that the whole like no muscle tension. I'm like, yeah, got it, right? And then you're like, yes, right? And then it's like, and then we feel proud of that, right?
Yeah.
But then the more and more I do it, I just go, okay, well, I got it down where I can hold my hand like this, and the move takes 1 minute, not 1 minute, 1 second, 2 seconds to do it. Like, shit, can I get it down to like half a second, right? And it's because we get trapped in there, right? We're just like, all right, right? And then what if you just go to the extreme, right? What if you just go to the extreme and say you can literally do magic, and there's no method, and you just do this, right? Now it's like, it's funny because I always do this to kids, magicians, like, you know, in conventions. It's like go, you know, like this. So the midnight shift, right? So if I go pick a card, king spades, right? Put a break. And if I just do this, give it a little riffle, right? It jumps to the top, and I go, how did I look? And a lot of times kids are like, oh, that looked great, man.
Great.
Oh yeah, and some people are like, oh, I got the bad angle, you know, when you, yeah, I caught it wrong, right, or something, right? But the majority of the time they don't even say that, right? You just go, oh, that's cool, man, that's cool, right? And I go, okay, do you mind if I show it to you again? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I do it again, and I go like this, and I go, here, 5 of spades, right? And I do this, right? And I go, how did that look, right? And you can see in their eyes, because they know they're like, fucking with me, right? You can say, because I didn't do anything, right? But something's happened, right? Well, he's telling Chang, did he really do it? Is he fucking with me, right? And then some people will, most of the people will just go, well, you didn't do anything, right? And I go, yeah. And he goes, what else? And he goes, well, why did you do this? Why did you turn your body and do this, right? And I go, exactly, right? Exactly. Why didn't you say that the first time? Right, why? It's interesting, right? Because when we learn the midnight shift, right? We learned that the sleight of hand involves this.
Yeah, have to be a mirror.
Involves this, right? So this action of me doing this for no fucking reason at all and coming back becomes the midnight shift. It's contained, right? It's the sleight of hand that you know or don't know, right? Here's our collections of sleights, right? And then, oh, you're doing the midnight shift, so I can only comment and talk about it in that context, right? In this box, right? Right? Like, we'll do it, and people are like, oh, maybe you get the breaks shorter, and then you do it, right? Like, maybe you can twist it, you know, maybe like this, right? But nobody ever just goes, why the fuck are you turning your body for, right?
Why are you up here?
Yeah, why are you doing that, right? It's because the outer reality and the inner reality, right? The outer reality is, imagine I don't do anything.
Right.
What is this? It makes no sense, right? And the inner reality is the method, right? So it's funny when you just take away the inner reality of no methods and you just go through the motions, things start becoming really weird,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it does. It really does. Like if I put down 4 aces, right? And let's say I'm going through like a biddle trick or something, right? Or something like, you know, like, so I'm like, yeah, I got the 4 aces, right? And it's an interesting exercise just to go through it and just don't do any methods, but you have to go through the motions, right? Like I got the 4 aces here, right? Look, You got. Right? Okay. And the 4 aces are right there. Yes? Okay, can you pick a card? You're like, what the fuck is that? You just... What? It's like raise, do you know deep thought? It's the raise rise trick, so it's like this. So I won't even do the method, right? Yeah. But it's funny to just go through the effect, okay? So you do this. So you go, you know, like, hey, so something like this. Think of one of these cards. You got it? Okay, good. All right. I'm not mind reader, but I'm a good guesser. Okay. Okay. What was the card you were thinking of?
3 of clubs.
3 of clubs. Okay. Are you sure you thought of 3 of clubs? Could have thought of any card, right? Yes. And then here's the 3 of clubs, right? And then, so you're doing raise, rise, and stuff. But I remember learning. I'm like, this is so fucking amazing, man. You're gonna do raise, rise, and it's crazy, right? But then look at, like, here's another pro tip. Anytime you're trying to come up with a trick or the method, or you know, like what we do, like being the craft, right? A very simple question is, how fucking hard is it to do something, right? So if I'm going to do this, and I go, name, what was your card, right? How hard is it to show you this fucking card, right? How hard is it, right? It would be like this, right? It would be like that, right? It wouldn't be, really. That's interesting. I just want to show you that there's a card here, right? And it's funny that when you say it like that, we all laugh, right? You're like, yeah, right? But we get stuck in that, right? We get stuck in it because the methods dictate our reality, right? Well, it's the same thing. Like, I'm sure a lot of people that learn magic nowadays, I went through the same thing when I was young. Is that why did I spend 10 years of my life on a cover pass? It's not to tell this story. Yeah. Because at that moment, I just thought that if I put enough time into it, I'll be fucking badass. Yeah. Right? Because of course I want to go to conventions and just fucking do this, and people are like, no, you just did not do the cover pass, right? Oh my god, and that was literally my purpose, right? No, seriously, yeah. Right? That was my purpose. I'm like, yes, that's magic. Ironically, that is magic in that context, right? Because what happens is, it's like this is what a magic effect nowadays is. You show a card, all right, the ace of diamonds, and you do this, right? Very good. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, and then you go, yeah, and then you do this, right? But here's the funny part. And then they go like this, and you go, like it's in my palm. And you're like, okay, so what, right? And no, but this is what happens, right? On Instagram and all this, and then all of a sudden, people are like, dude, how did that card get in your palm? It's so amazing, right? Right? Like right? And it's like, why can't you even go through the motions of showing your hand empty and producing the card, right? It has gotten to a point where we're like,
it's so tough.
Yeah, it's like, it's not even that. It's not even slide like that. They just do it and they just go, I'm done, because it was the move, what we're proud of was how do you steal the card out. And then we don't even know the purpose of it anymore. It's like, well, go to your pocket and produce it or something, you know? It's just like, I'm done. There was a magician years ago I met in Portland. He had this crazy Herman pass, right? And he would do his surrounding. And what's the funniest thing, because like the Herman pass was like something like where you do this, and then he went up like this, like an angle, and it got it, and then to do this, and it looked great at a certain angle, you know? Like, you know, angly stuff. But he would just say this, and he'd be like, here, I'm gonna show you something that's gonna be really fucking crazy, right? And they go, okay. So it's for this one guy, he actually see this crazy thing, like a magical change. But these guys see something fucking crazy. It's like, what the fuck, what is that? This looks like the deck came alive on its own, right? Like it was weird dual reality, and they still like, oh my god, right? Yeah, exactly, you know? I think a lot of people ask me, is like, how do you come up with your tricks, right? Or it's like, how do you come up with this stuff? I think if I can try to do the list of how do I go through something, is I don't do it anymore because I'm going through a magic midlife crisis. So, but back in the days when I did this, I just go, you know what? I really am interested in like Hoffinster's ace problem, right? Or invisible palm aces, right? So and I look at the versions I read, you know, all the stuff and saw, and I just go, okay, what is the problem, right? And there's a lot of problems with everything, right? And it's not because we can't solve them, it's because it's just what magic is. Like, for example, in the 80s, you know, Kaufman books, coin magic, it's this. It's, they come up with a really cool shuttle pass, right? Like a shell or something like really cool. And then they go, yeah, that's a great move. Let's do it 4 times and that's my new coins across, right? That was the mentality. It's like, and I always say this, is like, wouldn't it be great if you just had a coin in your hand and you just did this and it appeared over here, right? And we'll be like, man, that'll be so cool. I can't do that. So they just throw shit in the way. Let's put 4 coins there, right? It's like, no, because we need those extra coins to facilitate. You know what I'm saying?
So if you could really do that, you're saying no one could do it with 4 coins.
Yeah, right. And so like, for example, like, and most of the time I just think about it in a very like, if an effect, a trick is like a paragraph or a short story, I'm examining sentences, right? A sentence, right? This is how short it is. So like, I'll give you an interesting example. Might look good or bad on the camera, but it's a utility move. So, an interesting problem I see is if you have 4 queens, right? And then I see this, right? So if I need to steal a queen off, right? So some people do this, and then they do an Elmsey count, right? And I'm just like, why is this so weird? Like, you know. So another weird thing about counts, like, why can't you just do this? I'm that. I mean, or why am I even counting cards? How hard is it to show you cards, right? So, an interesting way to do this, like for example, if you're going to add a card on, right? So like, you know, doing like Hoffinster's asset, like, so you steal a queen away and then they select the card and you have to add that selection into this pile, right? To do the whole, you know, and it transpose, right? So, I'm not saying this is, it's never the final answer. Nothingness, right? If it is, then you should quit magic because you're getting bored of it. But so if you did something like this, so let's say you stole a queen, right? So instead of counting, right, I will put the queens here, right? That's good enough. 3 out of 4, right? So how do you show that with 4, right? How do you show that's 4 cards again, right? So let's say they pick a card, right? Whatever it is. And you control it to the top. So how do you add this on to this packet, right? So if you did something like this, and you say, can you hold out your hand for a second? Perfect, and hold on to the deck, right? And we're going to use these 4 queens, right? And then you already added it on, right? And the thing is, so it probably looked bad from an angle, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because this is the most important thing. So how do I think about this? Okay, so I think that sometimes when we add things on, most of the times is we get a break, you know, and I'm going to teach you how to do this because if I ever see anybody do this again, I'm going to kill them. This is a PSA. Okay? So it's a lot of times we do this, right? We pick up the cards and then we have to like be flush with the deck, right? And then pick it up, right? There's something interesting about thinking about things like that. So narrow, like why does the cards have to come like this? Why does it have to come here? Right? So if you do a Marvel thing where you just do this, right? Just that it'll change like this, right? It's interesting that you can do it in reverse, right? So if you think about this like a top change, and these are face up, all I'm going to do is just spread, right? But it's interesting is if you go here, hold out your hand for me, and then hold on to the deck, right? There's a lot of subtle things going on there. Is that I'm not doing this. There's a big difference between that and this. Can you hold out your hand for me? Right? Because it's on the same plane. Right? It feels, right? But if you do it like this, right, and the deck is up and down like this, right? It feels like it's a part. Like it feels like it's not a part of this packet, right? Right? And once you come up, it's not about coming up with it. It's not like, I got it, right? It's just because you read a lot and you study your craft, right? Is that I didn't go, oh, I know the Marlowe moves, so therefore it's a perfect time to put it in. No, it's that in your head, try not to think of things in the categories like what we're talking about midnight shift, right? Think of it as like, I didn't know you can move cards like that. Or like, oh, that's cute, right? I always say it's cute because, and then in your head, you just go, all right, what's the problem I have? Don't worry about what you learn. Use it as reference, right? It's like if you're trying to learn how to edit and you're like, what is this key for? You don't read a whole book of references, right? You look it up when you get like, there must be an easier way to slip this clip back and forth, right? There must be. And you go, slip, oh, there is something, right? That's how you do it, right? It's not reading this whole goddamn book with no context, right? And you go, I got it. And then when you do it, right? You go, how do I then begin, right? Right? It's reverse, right? So if you, here's another interesting way. So if you can kill the angle here, so let's see if we can do it for the camera. So what's interesting is if you do this, right? You can do this, right? Which is interesting, right? So you can steal it, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it looks pretty good from your angle. So let's see if it looks good from your angle. You know, obviously, so if you do something like this, right? Probably flash a little bit, but yeah. But what's funny is that you can just go back and forth, right? You can have these face down and have this card face up, right? And you can just add it on like that. It's kind of interesting, right? But that's the thing, it's not about a final solution. Yeah, it's about tinkering, right? Right? And I think that I find it more exciting to think about, again, like how hard is it to do something, right? So if I go, like, here's another one. So if I go, another problem it's not a problem. It's that we just think is standard, right? So if I'm going to take out the 4 aces, but I need to add a card, right, to the bottom or something to the pack. So we usually do this kind of move, the Vernon add-on, right? Right? And this is how narrow I think. Well, how hard is it to fucking do that? I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's not bad. That's pretty good, right? Like, but now I think like this. I go, well, if I have 4 aces, right? 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 Why do I need it like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is how small I get, right? So if you, no, you're right. This, let's see, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4, right? And there's 4 cards like this, right? Right? Then you can do whatever you want, right? But there's already a card there, right? And it's the Marlowe Upjog edition, but nobody ever uses it, right? So what you're doing is when you spread the cards, when you get to the second card, I'm just going to upjog both these cards and just push this card like this. And because it's stuck behind the spread, you can't say anything, right? And look how clean the edges are, right? And you just do this, and then you just hit it here, and then it just hides, right? Just little things like that, right? So then when you go, oh, that's cute, that's interesting, right? Push it as far as you can. What would benefit that? What about oil and water, right? Well, if you did something like this, I'm going to take out a bunch of, let's see, a bunch of black cards here. Let's see, right? And you do this, just going to take out a bunch of black cards like this, right? What have you done? You're literally 2 cards ahead, right? You're so light years ahead, right? Right? But why don't we think like this, right? And it's not like this stuff just comes to me, right? Literally, it's just me brute forcing myself and just go, what if, right? A lot of times I just go, man, wouldn't that be funny if you just did that? And I do it as a joke, and we laugh, and then you just go, oh, maybe, and you work yourself way back, right? It's like, but then what? I mean, all the tools are there. We're in the postmodern. It's not. There's only so many ways you can put on a card, you know. We're done, right? we're done. No, seriously, like, what else are you gonna do? I mean, until we become chemists. And no, seriously, right? No, seriously, right? Until then we have some other venues. But when you do a color change, it's either you put a card on or you take it off. There's nothing else there. Why? Right? Why do we think this way, right? Why? Because you can think about any other arts or crafts, right? Acting, right? We know you're an actor. We know everything. Not to the exact T, like exactly what you're saying. You don't know about the, like method acting or all these other, like all this stuff, right? You just know they act. You know they're, right? But we never ask these questions about that, right? We never ask questions about like, oh, I lost my innocence because I know he's acting, right? But somehow in magic, we're asking. I always say why. It doesn't matter anything. I just go why, right? I think it's because why are we so trapped in if the litmus is if we know the method or not. That's what dictates good magic. It's sad, right? It's sad. Like, man, I wish I didn't know that. Really? So if I showed you a trick and you didn't know a method, and you say, that's great, that's amazing, right? You see, that's why when I just said, well, take out the method and just do it, it seems weird, right? Right? Goes back to the same thing. It's because methods dictate everything we do.
That's very true.
But methods are very important. But the thing that we're forgetting is what sleight of hand is, right? It should be, sleight of hand should be in the sewers, right? It should be like the nitty gritty, like, right? Nobody should ever see it, right? It's like the duck calm on top of the water and his legs are underneath pedaling, right? And we love that. We love the pedaling. We love the, I want, right? And you don't see it, like, right? But but like we get joy out of that, right? But we get joy out of that so much that becomes our magic, right? That's why when I see kids on Instagram just do a really good diagonal palm shift, it's incredible, right? There's some people I've seen like, fuck, that's a great diagonal palm shift. Magic isn't like music or a movie where we have grown up and lived in it, right? This is innate in us, right? A beat. Magic isn't, right? So when people say, oh yeah, but that's not what laymen feel. No. Actually, they have no idea what they're feeling. It's what you're actually creating the context of what magic is to. So we were talking about this last night. We really make laymen, if you think about stereotypically and generally of card tricks, hey, it didn't go up my sleeves, hey look, just to recap, the cards are there the whole time, I didn't touch it, all this stuff, right? What are we doing? We are actually doing a live trailer demonstration of a method, not even an effect, right? And because they're laymen, they don't know about threads, they don't know about magnets and stuff, so we go, no, on my sleeve, right? No, right? So what we're actually doing is we're making laymen become beginner magicians. The same way we fell in love with it, right? I remember this guy told me, he's like, 6 years ago, I still remember this day, it's the best trick I ever seen. And this is how I described it. Well, what was it? Well, you take 2 ropes and it just became one. And he goes, but how did he do it? I've been thinking about it, right? And I just say, well, I know, like, you're telling me this 6 years later, right? So why do you still remember it? Is it the effect or the method? He goes, I don't know, whatever. I want to know how it's done, right? But why is he thinking like that, right? It's because I'm sure the trick is, hey, check out this rope, right? Check out this rope. Is it a single rope? Yes, right? But I take out imaginary, look, check it. Feel the ends. But when I touch the ends together, look, it's one rope again, right? Take a step back. What did I just do? And that's $10.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing we're missing, right? That's literally the only thing we're missing. Is that, right? So then why is it so when I remember when I just go, I hate it when laymen go, how did you do that? How did you do that? Well, right? And I go, why can't you just enjoy the magic, right? I always go, why can't you just enjoy magic? Why do you have to keep talking about the method and try and figure it out, right? Well, it's because they didn't say it. It's because I made them say it. It's because what I'm showing them makes, If I was a layman in a magic shop, I'll be like, well, how's it done? Well, I'll teach you for $10. Okay, right? That's the only thing missing, right? That's literally the only thing missing, right? Right? You know, wow, right? And I'm sure you can cut to the wow. I don't know if you guys saw it, but
No.
do you know this gimmick? The wow gimmick. It's a gimmick that has no explanation why it's there, right? You put a card into this gimmick, and then when it visually changes, right? It looks great, right? But there's no goddamn context for it, right? Right? People are like, oh, I put my Metro, my ID in here, trying to justify it in the real world, right? There's no way you can do it, right? And every time you do it, people always go, it must be that thing. Can I check that out? What is that thing, right? This is what's facilitating it, right? So how do we get out of that problem, right? I'll tell you how I do it. I do it like this. I say, hey, check this out. You know what this is? And they go, no. It's like, well, it's something special. In fact, I'll tell you this. You probably don't know this. There's a whole marketplace for magicians to teach other magicians things. This is how we learn, right? And this thing, look at this. You can tell nobody knew how to design anything. But this was created for other magicians to make things harder. That's the only sole purpose. So I'm going to show this to you now, and trust me, this is going to impress me more than you. I'm going to get more joy out of this than you, right? So look at this, and I show it to him. I go, look, you can see through it, and it's like a container where you put a card. So I'm trying to change it and make it harder on myself. Check it out. And I let him take it. I let him touch it. You go, yeah, cool, whatever. I just throw it to the side, pick a card, put it in, and I use the gimmick. I go, look, the card changes. Isn't that crazy? Nobody ever checks that, right? So when you say, well, sometimes the problem is that magic is like a puzzle, right? And we don't want that. Yes and no, right? Depends on the context, right? If I say, I have other tricks like presentation will be like, you know, a lot of times when I do magic, people think it's a puzzle, right? I go, yeah, that sucks, right? But yeah, yes and no, right? But what I find more interesting is that there's puzzles out there that can be magical. So there's this trick called Jack Synapses. And if you read it from I Forces Unseen, it is probably like the hardest routine trick you ever done, okay? And is probably, it's pure masturbation, right? In turn sleight of hand, right? But how do you make it into a trick, right? So I'm gonna try to show it to you. It's like, you know, like you take a 4/8 and there's a lot of things going on. It's very complex, right? And it's very convoluted, right? So how do you make that into something interesting for Link? Okay. So if I get in conversation, I would say, you know, like, so they go, oh, so what's your favorite tricks and like what's the hardest trick or whatever, right? And I just say, so you know what? I'll show you the hardest trick I know. And the reason it's the hardest trick I know is because the magic happens in less than a second. Less than a second. But if you indulge me, there's a long setup process. Long setup process. You'll understand, okay? So you will take out the 4 aces. Don't fall asleep on me now. But let's see. The 4 aces, and take these aces one at a time, and we'll put it right here, okay? And then we'll take out the jacks. And bear with me. I love this trick. And we'll take out the. Did we miss one? Oh, there it is. Okay. Take out the 4 jacks, and what we'll do is neatness counts. Got good. I don't know what. And we'll put them into the deck like this in 4 different places. Right? Told you it's long. Put them into 4 different places. This is the reason this is the hardest trick I know. Takes less than a second. Watch if I just do this. The jacks on top now, and in the middle of the deck. It's all 4 aces, right? Now, that's a fucking crazy trick, right? There's a lot of things going on, right? But imagine if you just did that straight up. Let me show you a trick. I'm going to take out the 4 aces and put them over here. Why are you putting those aces over there? Can I check them? Right, I have people like, oh, no, we'll get back to those later because here's the other jacks, and then I'm going to put them on top and put it face down and put it in there. People are like, what the fuck is going on, right? And in the end, you're like, hey, now they're watching, and now they change, and they go, they have to like go, oh, there's so many things I have to keep up. But as magicians, like, oh, okay, you're doing these moves. Oh, that's cool, right? But what if you just say, what's the hook? What's the hardest trick you know? Oh, the hardest trick I know? I'll see if I can do it. I might fuck up. But do you know why this is the hardest trick? Because it happens in less than a second. People are like, what does that mean, right? It's such a weird thing, right? To make layman go, the hardest trick I think is sleight of hand, so there's a lot of complex things, but it happens in less than a second, right? Right? And then this phase, as you're doing it, you just go, but it takes a long time to set up. It's worth it. So now they're kind of like, okay, right? They're like, okay, you're setting up. Okay, cool. All right, so you got the jacks and aces, cool, whatever. All right, are you ready? I'm like, oh, is this when it's happening? Okay, boom, right? Right? Now all that complexity helps the effect, right? But again, it's kind of like in the same sense of if the problem is it looks like a puzzle, why not just accept it? Right? The same thing with the wild gimmick. Why not just tell them it's a gimmick? Right. And I say, hey, check this out. This is a gimmick. But do you know what that means? I'm sorry. A gimmick is a term we use as magicians. Did you know that magicians have? And it's interesting that when you talk like that, it seems like you're talking, like we are talking for real. People are like, I didn't know that, right? Yeah. About magicians. Yeah, I just thought you were just a bunch of tricky assholes and make me feel inferior. That sucks, right? Doesn't that suck? That a lot of times when they go, how did you do that? How did you do that? I give up. Oh, fuck. Whatever. You fooled me. Therefore, it's magic. That's so sad. Why does magic have to be somebody giving up? This, like last night, that guy you were showing magic to, same thing he said to me. Oh, I love magic. He fooled me so many times. Oh, God. I love it, but I hate feeling that I don't know anything and I feel like I'm retarded. I'm just like, man, it sucks, right? It sucks that people have to say that, you know? But if you show it in this context, right? It's like all of a sudden you're like, I want to show you something I love. In fact, this is the hardest thing I've done. What does that mean, you know?
Yeah, then it becomes, instead of, how did you do that? It becomes, thank you, that was beautiful.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're always going to say, how did you do that, right? Because, again, this trick, yeah, but again, yeah.
Spiteful.
I want to try to create a context so when I show magic afterwards, people just go, wow, so how long have you been doing magic? I want them, Gabby Perez said this, magicians seem to try to convince people that we're not doing sleight of hand, where people take it for granted that you're doing sleight of hand because you're a magician, right? It's like,
that's interesting.
It's like if I love Forrest Gump, if I saw that movie, right? And then afterwards, that movie, I've seen it a million times, right? And afterwards I go to the after party and Tom Hanks is there. And I go up to him and I just say, hey Tom, I just want to say, this movie is it's beautiful, thank you, I love it. You know, he'll be like, oh yeah, of course, my pleasure, right? And I just say this, but I just want to tell you something. I know what you did, okay? No. I don't know exactly how but I know you acted, okay? I know what you did, okay? Just between you and me, right? Right? And what would he say right there? Be like, okay, whatever, laugh it off, right? Only magicians would do this. What are you talking about? I'm Forrest Gump. What is this acting? What are you talking about, right? Right? I love your magic show, man. Thank you. But I know what you did. A little slide hand here and there, yeah? Yeah? And we go, what are you talking about? It's real magic. Right? But why do we have to say that? Right? Well, maybe it's because the majority of the tricks we learn and show, again, surrounds this concept of you don't know the method. Yeah. Right? It'd be beautiful to show a trick to somebody. And you show it to them, and then you show them the method. And then you show it again. Can you create a trick where they know exactly what you're doing? And they can still feel it. Right? it comes down to that you can't do any of the tricks that you've been doing before because all those revolve around if you know something. Right? It's the ultimate goal. It's hard. But yet at the same time, I'm not saying this is what magic should be. It's a branch. Like Ozzy Wynn does Tamri style magic. He's the only guy that will make me say, oh, check the deck, like all that stuff. He's the only guy I'm like, that's magic. Because he creates the context, right? His context is, it's a game.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's done. I can't figure it out, and this is fun. Exactly. And he has good personality. I love magic.
Yeah.
But anybody else falls apart. Like, oh man, of course. Why? It's like any card to any number. He loves that trick. Any card to any number is an amazing trick until they name a number above
41.
Until they name a number above 20.
Yeah. Then
to me, I'll be more surprised if the card wasn't there.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be there? It's like my friend Jeff. It's funny, like when we try to do magician foods for each other, we'll be like, for example, here, we'll take out the jokers. So here, shuffle up the cards. Is it okay? Are you going to be able to see the table? Whatever.
Yeah.
I would do this to magicians. And this is funny. I did it to my friend Jeff. I just go. So he shuffles the deck, and I just go. Here, name any card you see in the middle. Just name it out loud.
Jack of clubs.
Jack of clubs. Oh. That is 30 from the top. Right? Okay. And at that point, he just goes, cool, I believe you. It's just like, and then to me, I'm like, well, count, motherfucker. Count, I want you to prove it, right? It's just like, but at that time, but it's funny, right? Yeah. We're like, let's see if it is, right? I'm curious if it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Okay, that was one up.
Pretty good.
So, but it's, I don't know, it's but let's say, like, I hit that, it's not estimation, I kind of fucked up, but regardless, in that moment, let's say, because I did it for Joe Barry at the session, right, and I did that, and I go, and I just did it, name a card, and I just go, that's 30 from the top, and I just left. I went outside for a smoke, and he just went, what? And then I was outside at the windows, like, and as he's counting, I'm literally like this, I'm like, did he get it? And I'm seeing the back of his head, and he just goes, oh, what the fuck? And I'm just like, like this fucking stalker. I'm like, did it work? Yes, right? But at that moment, he felt something. He's like, how, right? But so it's only surrounded by the method.
Yeah.
Right. So that magical experience, even though he felt the magical experience, the context I gave him was only that how did he estimate the card that quick, right? That's it. That's the only thread.
Yeah, that's the only
but don't get me wrong. That's still a valid feeling. That's still a valid context, right? But then you can't be all like elitist about like, well, why is the only thing about method and blah blah blah, right?
Yeah, you got to be aware of that context. I think you got to be aware that it is the context.
Exactly. You got it. You got to be aware of the context. So to go back, when I say making, like somebody doing diagonal palm shift and just showing the card, it is magic. But the difference is that you need to realize the context you're in. The context is you're showing other magicians a move, and the only context is how well I do it. That's it. And then we're impressed by your time that you spent into it. We all shed a tear saying something so mechanical, but yet can create something so interesting. Right? The only context is that. Right? It is magic. I mean, what is define magic? Right? It's like it might as well be going. How did you do that?
Yeah.
Right? There is no definitive answer. Right? Is it an experience? Is it a feeling? Right? Well, if it's a feeling, then books, movies do the same thing, right? But yet, people argue like, no, it has to be about fooling them. Okay, but do you know?
There's the argument about suspending someone's disbelief.
Right. I'll tell you this. One moment lately, I'm like a year ago, when I really got fooled. I go, right? Had nothing to do with magic. I was watching like late night show with like Jay Leno or some, whatever. And Hugh Jackman, Wolverine guy, came on. I'm like, oh, I like those movies. They're fun. And he, what is he, Aussie? Right? And he started talking like, oh yeah, like this. And like his, Nicole Kidman is like British. I had no fucking idea. That blew my fucking mind. I thought he was American. He's Wolverine. What? I'm like, oh, what? That fooled me, right? But here's the thing. Why did that fool me? Right? Can you actively fool somebody? Or do they have to accept something to be fooled? Right? So in his movies, he didn't go, hey, I'm American. Look, I got my driver's license to prove it. I'm American, right? Right? You're actively trying to convince them that you're now from Australia.
Right, which plants the seed of doubt.
Yeah, right. But yet, because as his character, he just did it, and I accepted it, right? And then that was a good kind of fool, right? Because I was pleasantly surprised. What? Wow, that's amazing, right? It wasn't like, God damn it, it's fucking Aussie people.
Yeah.
No, right? But if you actively
do that?
But if you actively just go, yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah, you're like, okay, I give up. It's not, right? It's a negative experience, right? I don't know.
Good.
Do some color changes or something.
Yeah, let's do it.